Good morning and welcome to our cash flow planning webinar. This is the next in our series of planning webinars hosted by our marketing team. My name is Teddy Murphy. I'm the CEO of MIAGEN. And I want to give you a little background to ourselves before we start. We are a forecasting and planning consultancy, and we implement models and technology based on best practice in FP&A. We have an office in Dublin, our headquarters, and we have an office in London and also in Doha. And our mission as an organization is to enable better decision making for our clients. So, cash flow planning. In all our series, we work through three core areas in every presentation just to kind of keep it simple, and we also try and keep them as short as possible to give you a little maximum impact for your time. So today what I'm going to focus on is three steps. First of all, to plan your balance sheet to drive your cash flow. Secondly, to identify key drivers to deliver cash flow comfort. And finally, to empower decision making with an integrated cash flow plan. Or probably put simply, to build it, model it, and to integrate it. So the first area of building it. So we always focus on the balance sheet, and that's where we intend to spend time when we build a cash flow. So cash flow is really a product of the balance sheet, and if we build the forecasted or the planned balance sheet well, then the cash flow will just fall out. Of course, the existing balance sheet you have may not be sufficient to drive the cash flow you need, so we need to work on the balance sheet and schedule that out a little bit more. So what we do is we focus on what schedules we need in your balance sheet. So we look at things in your working capital. We may take an example of debtors where we have a large number of debtors, but maybe 70 or 80% of them, like the Pareto rule, is made up of not that many debtors. So we'll focus on those ones and build those into a schedule and then assign days to those. Just an example, could be any other area of your cash flow. And that'll give you something where you can change easily without having an awful lot of work to rebuild. We need to understand the logic of the balance sheet and the resulting cash flow. So if we have balances that change in our balance sheet, we're not aware why, then we have a major problem in the first place. So what we really want to do is go down through our balance sheet and say, okay, if nothing changed on our actual balance sheet, then there's no impact to our cash flow at all. And we work back from there. So we take our P&L and we look at the items that create cash and the ones that don't. So we take out, like in a normal cash flow, we would take out our depreciation, etc. But we can look at the P&L, and we can group it into the areas that suit the schedules in our balance sheet. So now we've already looked at the balance sheet and broke it out. We're now going to look through the P&L and look at things that have a cash impact, don't. The ones that attract VAT, we can aggregate all of those into one calculation and just apply VAT to them. Unless you have multiple rates of VAT, in which case we just group them accordingly. And also, let's be aware of materiality. There's no point in just doing it because it's there. Does it have an impact? And what type of impact does it have? Okay, so we also need to figure out if it's comprehensive once we've built it. Does it cover all our areas? And the easiest way to see that is to load the next month of actuals and watch it go crazy. So I don't think we've ever seen a cash flow model built first time that worked perfectly. I mean, a cash flow in its very essence, it's really about learning the timing of change in cash across the business. So it's going to be iterative. And the more you bring in actuals and test it and prove, see the way it's moving and see where your effort is required, but always thinking about how am I going to maintain this? You know, we don't want to get to maybe 1% of accuracy, or sorry, of inaccuracy, 99% of accuracy, and then realize afterwards that it takes us most of the month to maintain it. That's not effective. Okay, so we're looking at the second area, which I was calling model it. So the key drivers. So what we really want to know when we build a cash flow model, we want to know what's likely to change. But not just that. So we know things that are likely to change, like our debtors in the prior example. We know that the days can change on large accounts, and maybe in our schedule we now have things like that, and we can see the impact of change in that. But the second part of that is, how would we know something is going to change? And if you live in finance like I did, you're the last person to find out probably something like that, but you're still responsible for it. So what we really need to do is go and find out who knows about this first. So if it's a major account and it's a debtor, then we can go and talk to either the salesperson or key account manager or somebody who's related to that, or even call the client themselves. And just, we want to open a channel of communication somewhere that just flags to somebody that if something is likely to change here, we need to know, because it's driving our model. And the more we do that throughout the organization in different areas, the more we solve the problems we have in planning, because most of the problems in planning, some of them are technological, some of them are strategic, but most of them are communication. What are the KPIs and risks that you need to be aware of to be in control of your cash flow plan? Do you have KPIs, first of all, to drive your cash flow, or to report in your cash flow? I presume we have things like how far off our balances or comfort levels we have, things like that, buffers. But, or we probably have contingencies factored in that we're kind of saying, well, at least we've got that. But what we really want is something that shows us the number of months of cash flow comfort we have. So how many times can we cover our costs as we run? All the metrics or KPIs or ratios that you have implemented in the past, no doubt. But what are the ones that are important to us here? And what risks are there to our cash flow? So what can change quickly? And that can be far more important than the KPIs, because KPIs will give you a level of comfort on your current activity, but there could be a risk that could obliterate all of those in an instant. And it could be good things and bad things. So, sometimes we can be carrying far too much cash, and it can be, it's comfortable, but it's too comfortable. It's not efficient. It's not making the best use of your resources. So at what stage do we move to high interest accounts? Do we stop leaning on existing resources? But again, what do we need to know? And really, it depends on who's asking the questions a lot of the time, but also we should have action plans, minimum, maximum balances, triggers that kick off things. So we know when we get to a certain level, this is what we would do next. What kind of timeline are we looking at? If we're looking a couple of months out, we can see our current balances are maybe 3-6 months of cash cover. We think that's far too much to be holding in that working capital account. Then we say this, we set a maximum balance, and anything above that, we move into a high interest account. Or we reduce other liens we have. What timelines are we looking at? So when we look at cash flow planning, and there are different phases of cash flow planning. If we're planning 6 months plus out, we're really looking at strategic modeling, and it's connected to the strategic plans of the business and the general assumptions that we have. If we're looking at within the next 6 months, we're looking at bringing in our monthly balance sheet and having something that is connected to parts of the organization and can tell us what's going on, so that we can start to tweak our assumptions and our drivers a little bit better. If we're looking at daily cash flow planning, we're really not in a great space, and we're spending an awful lot of time building something that's going to be rebuilt again in a week's time. So we need to get out of that, and then again we need an action plan. So we deal with different time periods in different ways. Just going back to things like risks, things like currency fluctuations, we need to be able to see the impact of that. We can have situations where we do get great profitability, but we also undertake great risk, and that needs to be taken into account as well. So do we know the impact of a major currency fluctuation on the dollar or sterling, euro? over the next couple of months, and what have we factored in terms of cover. So the next area I want to talk about is integrated. And integration is normally taken to mean this is an IT thing where we need to connect our systems together. And yes, that is definitely part of it. But integration is also connected thinking and integrating processes and integrating people. And again, it goes back to who's responsible for this. I mean, if we follow the trail of something, we really want to get to the ideal world where we have the person who knows first changing that piece of information which is impacting my decision. The next area we want to look at is who's the audience. So who is is it the CFO? Is it myself or yourselves? Is it other parts of the business? And how do we present that information in the required periodic manner? How can we make it less manual? How can we automate the collection of data? There's plenty of tools and applications out there in the environment now, so we shouldn't be manually pulling all this thing together on a weekly or monthly basis. We should be relying on the technology that's available. So can we make it a habit? If we're collecting data from sales teams or other environments within the organization, be it HR, treasury, can we make it a frequent habit that this data can get collected on a monthly basis so it can now start to drive a rolling cash flow forecast for us, and now we're managing it. We're now in control of it. And if you're finding that difficult to do, as you probably will, can we look at other information that's collected in the organization that we can use? So it's already being produced somewhere, we just need to find it, and we need to be able to connect to that information. And that's probably one of the best ways to actually make a cash flow dynamic. Okay, well, that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for taking the time to join. Have a little offer for you at the end. So if you do have problems, and it's very easy for me to stand here and just present to you some of the things we do with other clients, but send us your problems. If you think, well, we've got this situation, we don't know how to resolve it, we'd be happy to have a look at it for you. Send it to fixthis@miagen.com and make a difference in 2014. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you again soon.